Welcome to Math with Mr. J. In this video, I'm going to cover percent change. We will go through 4 basic examples and then 4 word problems. So this will give us a good understanding of percent change. And feel free to pause the video at any point and try some of these examples on your own. Let's jump into number 1, where we have an original value of 45 and then a new value of 36. We had a change. The original value, 45, decreased to 36. So we need to figure out the percent change we have here. Now, to calculate percent change, we can take the new value and subtract the original value. That gives us the amount of change, the amount of increase or decrease. Then we divide that result by the original value. And keep in mind, always divide by the original value because we are finding the percent change from that original value. That's going to give us a decimal. We then multiply that decimal by 100 to convert it to a percent. So here, in order to calculate the percent change, we have percent change equals, and we take the new value, 36, subtract the original value, 45, divide by the original value, 45, and then multiply by 100. Let's work through this now. 36 minus 45 gives us negative 9. And that negative tells us we have a decrease here. If we end up with a positive, that tells us we have an increase. So we have negative 9 over 45 times 100. So we have that change of negative 9. We decreased by 9 over the original value of 45. Now we need to divide. So we have negative 9 divided by 45. That gives us negative 2 tenths. So now we have negative 2 tenths times 100. So we're taking that decimal and multiplying it by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. And a quick way to multiply by 100 is to move the decimal twice to the right. So once, twice to the right, and we can fill this gap, this place, with a 0. And that gives us negative 20%. Now that negative tells us we have a decrease. So we went down 20%. So this was a 20% decrease. Let's move on to number 2. Taking a look at number 2, we have an original value of 16 and a new value of 28. We had a change. The original value, 16, increased to 28. We need to figure out the percent change here. So here for percent change, we need to do the new value, 28, minus the original value, 16, divided by the original value, 16, and then we multiply by 100. Let's start by subtracting here. 28 minus 16 gives us 12. So that's the amount of change, and since it's positive, that tells us we had an increase of 12. Now we divide that amount of change by the original value. So we have 12 over 16 times 100. Now let's divide. So we have 12 divided by 16. That gives us 75 hundredths, 0.75. And we need to multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. Now, a quick way to multiply by 100 is to move the decimal twice to the right. So once, twice to the right, and that gives us 75%. And since that's positive, that tells us we have an increase. We went up 75%. So this was a 75% increase. Let's move on to numbers 3 and 4. Now let's take a look at numbers 3 and 4, starting with number 3, where we have an original value of 22 and a new value of 55. So we can see that we have an increase here. Let's figure out the percent change. So percent change equals the new value, 55, minus the original value, 22, divided by the original value, 22, times 100. Let's start by subtracting. 55 minus 22 gives us 33. So that's the amount of change, and it's positive. So that tells us we had an increase of 33. Let's divide that by the original value, 22, and then multiply by 100. Now we divide. So we do 33 divided by 22. That gives us 1 and 5/10, 1.5. And we multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. And we can do that by moving the decimal once, twice to the right, and we can fill this gap, this place, with a 0. That gives us 150%. So this is more than a 100% increase. A 100% increase means that the original value was doubled, and our original value of 22 was more than doubled. So this does make sense. A 100% increase for 22 would be 44. But again, this is more than double. Our new value was 55. So this is something to keep in mind when it comes to percent changes that are 100% or more. So we had a 150% increase here. Let's move on to number 4, where we have an original value of 80 and a new value of 31. So we have a decrease here. Let's find the percent change. So percent change equals the new value, 31, minus the original value, 80, divided by the original value, 80, times 100. Let's start by subtracting. We have 31 minus 80. That gives us negative 49. So that's our amount of change, and it's negative. So that tells us that we have a decrease. And we need to divide that by the original value, 80, and then multiply by 100. Now let's divide. Negative 49 divided by 80 gives us negative 6,125/10,000ths, negative 0.6125. And we need to multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. So let's move the decimal once, twice to the right, and that's going to give us negative 61.25%. And that negative percent tells us that we have a decrease. So for number 4, we had a 61.25% decrease. Now, one thing I want to mention, if we end up with a decimal, especially a long decimal or repeating decimal, we can round. So let's go through that for this example and round to the nearest percent. I'm actually going to write this off to the side here. So negative 61.25% is approximately Well, when we round to the nearest percent, round to the ones place, we have a 1 in the ones place with a 2 to the right in the tenths place. So this rounds to negative 61%. So rounding to the nearest percent, this is approximately a 61% decrease. So this is the exact answer, and then this is the approximate rounded answer. So again, if we end up with a decimal, especially a long decimal or a repeating decimal, we can round. Let's move on to numbers 5 through 8, the word problems. Now let's take a look at some situations, some word problems, and calculate the percent change. Let's jump into number 5, where we have the population of a town went from 8,000 to 9,500 over the last decade. What was the percent change in population? So let's set this up. Percent change equals, and now we need to do the new value minus the original value. Well, the new value is 9,500. That's where the population is right now. So 9,500 minus the original value. That's 8,000. So the population started at 8,000 and went to 9,500 over the last decade. So let's subtract the original value, 8,000. And then we divide that by the original value, which again is 8,000. And then multiply by 100. Now let's work through this, and we will start by subtracting. So 9,500 minus 8,000 gives us 1,500. And that's the amount of change. The population changed by 1,500. And that's positive. So that tells us we have an increase here. So the population increased by 1,500. Let's divide that amount of change by 8,000 and then multiply by 100. So now we divide 1,500 divided by 8,000 gives us 0.1875. So 1,875 10,000ths. So that's our decimal, and we need to multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. And remember, a quick way to multiply by 100 is to move the decimal twice to the right. So once, twice, the decimal is now in between the 8 and the 7. So that gives us 18.75%. And that's positive. So again, that tells us we have an increase here. So what was the percent change in population? Well, 18.75%, and that was an increase. So an 18.75% increase. Let's move on to number 6. For number 6, we have a car's value depreciated from $23,000 to $17,250. What was the percent change in value? Now keep in mind, depreciated means that the value went down, so the value decreased. So let's set this up. So we have percent change equals, and now we need the new value minus the original value. The new value is $17,250. That's what the car is worth right now. So $17,250 minus the original value. So what was the value of the car to start with? Well, $23,000. So minus $23,000. And then we divide by the original value, which again, that's 23,000. And then we multiply by 100. So now let's work through this, starting with the subtraction. So we have 17,250 minus 23,000. That gives us negative 5,750. Now that's the amount of change. And since it's negative, that tells us we have a decrease. The car's value went down by $5,750. So now we need to divide that amount of change by the original value, 23,000, and then multiply by 100. Now we need to divide. So negative 5,750 divided by 23,000. That gives us negative 0.25, negative 25 hundredths. So that's our decimal, and we need to multiply that decimal by 100 to convert it to a percent. Let's move the decimal twice to the right. So we get negative 25%. Now keep in mind, since that's a negative percent, that tells us we had a decrease. The value of the car decreased by 25%. So what was the percent change in value? Well, there was a 25% decrease. Let's move on to number 7. For number 7, we have a YouTuber's subscribers increased from 1,572 to 6,390 over the course of a year. What was the percent change in subscribers? Round to the nearest percent. Let's set this up off to the side. So percent change equals, and now we need the new value minus the original value. Well, the new value is 6,390. So the new value, 6,390 minus, now we need the original value, which is 1,572. So that's the starting value. The YouTuber went from the starting value of 1,572 to the new value of 6,390. So minus 1,572. And then we divide by the original value, which again is 1,572. And then we multiply by 100. So let's work through this. We will subtract first. So 6,390 minus 1,572. That gives us 4,818. Now that's the amount of change. So the subscribers increased by 4,818. So now we need to divide that amount of change by the original value and then multiply by 100. So let's divide now. We have 4,818 divided by 1,572. That gives us 3.064, and that decimal continues on. So let's stop there and we will end up rounding. Now we need to multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. So let's multiply by 100 now by moving the decimal once, twice to the right. That gives us 306.4. And again, that decimal continues on. So let's round this to the nearest percent. We do that by rounding to the ones place. We have a 6 in the ones place with the 4 to the right in the tenths. So does this round to 306% or 307%? Well, 306%. So this is approximately, and I'm using the approximately symbol here since we are rounding. Approximately 306%. Now that's positive, so that tells us we had an increase. So what was the percent change in subscribers? Well, there was approximately a 306% increase. Now remember, when it comes to percent changes that are 100% or more, a 100% increase means that the original value doubled. So this 306% increase makes sense. The original amount of subscribers more than doubled, which tells us the percent change is going to be more than 100%. Lastly, let's move on to number 8. For number 8, we have the selling price of a house was lowered from $310,000 to $295,000. What was the percent change in price? Round to the nearest percent. So let's set this up. We have percent change equals, and now we need the new value minus the original value. Well, the new value is $295,000. That's the price of the house now. So $295,000 minus we need the original value now. So what was the price of the house to start with? Well, $310,000. So minus 310,000. And we divide that by the original value, which again is 310,000. And then we multiply by 100. Now let's work through this. So let's subtract. We have 295,000 minus 310,000. That gives us negative 15,000. The house decreased in value by $15,000. And we need to divide that by the original value and then multiply by 100. So now we divide. We have negative 15,000 divided by 310,000. That gives us negative 0.0483, and that decimal continues on. It actually ends up repeating, so let's stop there, and we need to multiply that decimal by 100 in order to convert it to a percent. So let's multiply by 100 now by moving the decimal once, twice to the right. And we get negative 4.83. And that decimal continues on. So let's round this to the nearest percent, which is rounding to the ones place. We have a 4 in the ones place with an 8 to the right in the tenths. This rounds to negative 5%. So this is approximately, and I'm using the approximately symbol here since we rounded, negative 5%. And that negative tells us we had a decrease. So what was the percent change in price? Well, there was a 5% decrease. The price went down 5%. So there you have it. There's how to calculate percent change. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.